Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Cop Talk. I'm Kevin Schroeder, your host. I'm here with my co-host, Captain Ed Mamet.
Hello, WABC listeners. Here we are again with another interesting guest.
So today's guest is Ken Genalo. Ken is the New York City Field Officer Director for ICE. As we all know, the immigration crisis continues to heat up. Last week, a pair of suspects, I believe from Venezuela, attacked and carjacked some off-duty cops up in the Bronx. As we know, the migrants' situation in New York is just getting out of control. It needs to be stopped. It needs to be under control. And Ken is here to speak about that. Welcome, Ken.
Thank you. I appreciate the ability to come on and talk. I always say that it's very important that the public understands the mission-critical function that the men and women of ICE ERO, which stands for Enforcement Removal Operations, execute within the community. We basically ensure that all public safety threats, national security threats, are removed from the communities and placed in removal proceedings before an immigration judge. So they have their time in court, and if they're ordered removed, then we remove them from the United States. So, it's a very important function, and many people don't realize the work and the importance of the work that my staff does.
So, Ken, you grew up in Brooklyn?
I sure did, if you couldn't tell. I mean, yes, I grew up in Brooklyn. I lived there most of my life when I was younger, and, I went to Xaverian High School and then over to Pace University and then made my way to the federal government. It's funny, as I got into law enforcement because I used to work security at Shea Stadium at Madison Square Garden back in a while ago, let's just say. And a lot of the people I worked with wound up going into law enforcement, whether it was NYPD or other jobs. But I went federal, and I got in with the federal government back in '92. So this weekend, I'm actually hitting 32 years, all with immigration in the federal government. And most of the time I've been in the office in Newark, New Jersey. I've actually been detailed to run the office in El Paso, Texas. And then within the last 2 years, I've been running the New York City office here for ERO.
So how was it growing up in Brooklyn?
It was great growing up in Brooklyn. I mean, you can't say anything bad about it. And, I always say when you go back to Brooklyn, you go back to the motherland. It's a good spot. I actually still have family that live in Brooklyn, where I actually grew up in Dyke Heights. And, granted, a lot of things changed, but there's still a lot of memories and good times from Brooklyn.
Our producer and I are also from Brooklyn.
There you go. See that? We got a lot of Brooklynites here, so we're doing real well already.
Yeah, well, I'm from Manhattan, the West Side, so that's another story.
Well, we won't hold that against you. Don't worry.
Yeah, Brooklyn. To me, Brooklyn was somewhere in Long Island. But that's okay. We never left the island of Manhattan when I was growing up. A little more. Give us a little more background in regards to law enforcement. How you rose up the rank to where you are today.
Well, like I said, basically, I started out, believe it or not, in 1992 as an immigration inspector at JFK Airport. Those are the people that you see when you come up in from foreign, and you have to have your passport stamped, and they inspect you, and they admit you into the United States. And then from there, I went over to Newark Airport, and then eventually I went over to ICE, because at that time when I was at Newark, that's when 9/11 occurred, obviously, and then we used to be part of DOJ. They created the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, and at that time I went from doing like the airports and the seaports and the border to the interior, and I went over to ICE, Enforcement Removal Operations in Newark. It was about 2005. I spent about 15, 16 years working the streets of New Jersey and doing some mission-critical work there. I rose up the ranks in Newark from an officer to a supervisor, from a supervisor to an assistant field office director, and then to a deputy field office director. It's kind of hard to explain in NYPD terms. Supervisors like a sergeant, assistant field office director, I guess would be like a lieutenant. A deputy field office director would be similar to a captain. And the field office director, which I am now, when I went over to New York, I guess that would be the overall director or commissioner of the actual agency.
Gotcha. When you worked in Newark, did you deal with Kevin Schneider, chief over there, Kevin Schneider?
Of Newark PD?
Newark PD, yeah.
It's possible. So many different law enforcement agencies in in New Jersey. It's not like New York City where you just have one.
Right.
They have so many over there.
Yeah, Kevin's a legend there in Newark. That's why I asked. How's the progress with the Adams administration with the migrants?
Well, the last time I spoke, I had the conference with Congresswoman Malliotakis out on Times Square when they had the issue with the individuals that had attacked the NYPD officers. You know, I had stated that, look, at least this administration, you know, we have a seat back at the table. We've had some dialogue at that point, and then subsequently, we've had some informal meetings right now. I mean, there's nothing concrete going forward, but I mean, at least we are dialoguing. Unlike the last mayor administration, Mr. de Blasio, he basically removed us from the table. And remember, we used to have a unit that worked in Rikers. We worked hand in hand with NYC DOC there in Rikers. And any individual that was finished with their local sentences and was being released, if they were foreign born, they were vetted by my staff. And if we determined we had probable cause that they were amenable to proceedings, removal proceedings, we would take them into custody. And during that time when we were at Rikers, you know, on a weekly basis, we would be arresting close to 100 individuals. Wow. And then obviously we got kicked out of Rikers, so all of that where we were, and then they stopped honoring our detainers, all of those individuals just get released right back into the community. And you know the recidivism rate on, you know, criminal individuals. And they just prey on the same communities that they've just preyed on before. And you see a lot of it now with the arrest on some of the foreign-born nationals that we have. It's not just one arrest. They have like several arrests. And the problem with the sanctuary policies, number one, bail reform is, you know, it handcuffs a lot of law enforcement because they get arrested, they're out before anything can happen. They're not even remanded to Rikers anymore. Usually they would be remanded to Rikers. We can drop an immigration detainer. Now they're out, they're released, so we don't know about it. We can't drop a detainer. Not that it would be honored anyway by NYPD. But since they'd be released, they get arrested again. We don't know because NYPD, obviously, they can't cooperate with us. They can't even speak with us. Because we'll ask about, you know, let's just say last known whereabouts on an individual that was released, and like, sorry, due to the policies, we can't speak with you. So basically, they had the individual. We want the individual. They can't tell us that they have the individual. They can't honor the detainer. So they release them back in the community. Now, I have to get my staff. My staff has to now go into the community. I have to spend resources, time, right, financially, and the public safety threat now increases for my staff, but also for the public, because we're out in the community trying to arrest an individual we could have just taken custody of in a secure setting, whether it's in a jail or whether it's from another law enforcement agency. And this is something that, you know, it's amazing. And I tell some of the media outlets, believe it or not, some of the intel that we have to find out that we deal with, basically, we're finding it out through the media. I says, I don't have a law enforcement agency calling me and say, hey, what do you got on this one? Or this individual was just arrested. He's a national, he's foreign born, or he's been arrested several times. What do you have? No, we get cases. We have our own database, all right? And each week there's hundreds of arrests in New York City. So I try to prioritize my resources going after the worst of the worst, the violent criminals. And I only find out about certain ones is through the media, especially all the ones that had the attacks on the NYPD offices.
Right. It's unbelievable. Now, prior to de Blasio's administration, I'm sure it was much better cooperation with the NYPD, correct?
Right, but there's sanctuary policies that go all the way back to Mayor Koch. Right. All right, so it's not as though those sanctuary policies, and let me just explain why they instituted these sanctuary policies. And it's a false narrative that they play. They state that, ICE is out there, ERO, and we're out there arresting victims. We're out there arresting witnesses. It couldn't be farther from the truth because we have policies against that, and we use a victim-centered approach. And we don't arrest victims. We don't arrest material witnesses. We have prosecutorial discretion, just like every law enforcement agency does. So when they push this narrative that they won't cooperate with law enforcement, it's farther from the truth because we're not there looking for victims. We're looking for the perpetrators of the serious crimes. So those policies that they enacted in the de Blasio era basically told all law enforcement agencies, you can no longer cooperate with ICE, you can't speak with ICE, you will not honor ICE detainers if they lodge detainers against individuals. So basically, all these people that we would have encountered, we would have taken custody of if they were amenable to proceedings, they're just left to roam in the streets. So how can you say sanctuary policies benefit the citizens, residents, and migrants of New York City? It's basically when we work together, law enforcement, whether it's federal, state, local, it makes the communities safer. Right now, when you're releasing criminals, and some of them are serious violators, back into the community, you can't say that this is a benefit for the residents and citizens and migrants of New York City. It's not. It's the total opposite.
Ken, the forerunner of ICE was INS, correct?
Correct. That is correct.
So for the listening audience, INS, as I recall, was Immigration and Naturalization Service.
You got it.
And ICE is, can you tell the audience?
Sure. It's Immigration and Customs Enforcement.
Right.
And ICE has 3 directorates under it. It's HSI, which is Homeland Security Investigations. It's ERO, which is what I am the director over. It's Enforcement Removal Operations. And it's also OPLA, which is our Office of Principal Legal Advisor, which is our attorneys that we use.
And that came about after 9/11.
Correct. 9/11 created the Department of Homeland Security, and then ICE was formed after that.
You know, you mentioned former Mayor Koch. I remember when that order went in. I think it went in 1988 originally. It was an executive order. I was a detective then, and I was in narcotics. And quite often we came across foreign nationals dealing narcotics, particularly Colombia, South America, and we would hold them for you guys, and they would disappear. I remember Koch came out with an order saying the police will no longer cooperate, but that was an executive order. It wasn't an actual order, a legal order. It was an executive order from the mayor's office, and that was a big mistake. Now, I believe it's changed where now it's codified.
Correct.
Right, which makes it even more difficult.
Correct. Yes. It's been passed by the city council in New York. The policies, that put into effect this limit and this lack of cooperation. And just recently, I attended a press conference with Councilman Borelli and Councilman Holden and the Bipartisan Common Sense Caucus at City Hall. They're proposing a legislative bill that doesn't change the sanctuary policy. All it says is change the one part that states that you can't cooperate with ICE. And you know what? That is going to make a huge difference if they could do that.
So it sounds like the process now is easier than under de Blasio.
Well, I don't know if it's going to pass. I sure hope it is. But the problem is that right now there is no cooperation at all with ICE.
But at least there's an attempt to change things.
Well, this
probably wouldn't have happened.
This Common Sense Caucus, they've been working on this, and they proposed this legislative in this bill, and obviously it has to go before the city council.
Now, what about Rikers Island? Will that be included?
Well, right now I'll take any cooperation we can get from our law enforcement partners, specifically NYPD. I would love to have a unit back on Rikers Island again. And the only reason why is it's going to allow us to take custody of dangerous criminals in a safe, secure setting that need to be placed in removal proceedings, and that I don't have to have my staff go out into the community and try and rearrest. Because we all know if we're getting them in a residence, they have the upper hand. They know what's in the house, right? So it's a danger factor for my staff. Or if we're trying to wait them out, there's a lot of time and resources that are spent when we could have just taken custody of the individual directly in the secure setting.
Well, given the sanctuary laws in New York City, what do you think the ultimate solution is?
Well, I don't know what the ultimate solution is. I know the solution that I would like to see, and that is basically the cooperation restored between NYPD and ICE ERO, because we have overarching priorities. And our main priority and function is to keep the city of New York safe. So if we're not working together, how do we keep the city of New York safe? I'm here to help. My staff is here to help. We say it all the time, and I'll tell any law enforcement agency, any sheriff, any mayor, if you want my help, I will give you my help. The problem is when I ask for information or reciprocation, the sanctuary policies will not allow them to help us.
Well, let me give you a scenario. Trump says that if he becomes president, there's going to be mass deportations. Would not that involve your agency?
Well, I mean,
immensely.
I can't speak on what would happen if individuals were elected, but anything that involves removal of individuals from the United States would fall under the purview of my agency, Enforcement Removal
Would your
Operations.
agency have the resources to handle such a program?
Well, just take a look at law enforcement around the world now, or just the United States. Every law enforcement agency is lacking resources right now. It's very hard in this climate, in this era against law enforcement, and same thing against ICE. You have anti-ICE rhetoric. And, of course, there's budgetary issues. We would all like to have more resources, and I'm the same way. I would love to have more resources.
What about the idea of deputizing police officers? Can that be done?
Oh, I don't know. That's something that...
one of my favorite ideas. I think it can be done. Of course, the city would have to agree. But
yeah, that would fall solely on New York City.
Right, but your agency would have to agree to that also.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that they would have to speak about, the federal government. And
because it's obvious that local police are the eyes and ears. They know what's going on. They know
absolutely. But that's why we want their cooperation, 100%.
Right, but if they would deputize, it could actually hold these people for you, somehow arrest them under the federal law. It would make your life easier. Then turn them over to you.
No, I understand. But one of the things that, a lot of the people talk about with sanctuary policies, and I want to make sure that people understand this, is, look, we're not asking the local law enforcement to do our job. We can do that on our own. We have no problem with that. All we're asking for is the cooperation, because you'll hear them saying, we're not doing the federal government's job. We're not asking you to do the federal government's job. All we're asking for is cooperation. I have my staff. We'll do the job. But you're a law enforcement agency. We're a law enforcement agency. When do you not cooperate with each other? I mean, does make no sense. And I go back to the old adage, I was at the time in Newark. In 2001, I was part of a special response team, and I was deployed on 9/11 to come and help here at Ground Zero in the city. And to that day, to this day, that day lives in my mind, and it motivates me with my staff, is that I never want to see that happen again. And one of the main reasons the 9/11 Commission stated it happened was due to the lack of cooperation between federal, local, and state law enforcement. So it's almost as though we're going back. And maybe at that time it was the feds that weren't cooperating. Now it's the other way around, where you have your state and local that's not cooperating with us. So, it's food for thought, and I just wish we could stand. We should be side by side, arm in arm with NYPD all the time, and any one of our law enforcement partners. We're doing the same job. We're doing the same job, and want to keep the people, New York City, Long Island, the 7 lower counties of the Hudson Valley region, which all fall under my jurisdiction. That is my main purview, is to keep the community safe.
You said that you were down at 9/11, right?
Yes.
Okay, you responded. You were registered with the 9/11 program?
Yes.
Okay, make sure you stick with that, because a lot of people don't know about that.
Yes, no, trust me, we make sure we put that out in the office, absolutely.
Okay. Great. So at this time, I just have to take a moment to thank our sponsor, Good Greek Moving and Storage. Good Greek Moving and Storage has been named National Mover of the Year and the most referred moving company in the U.S. Spiro Georgitakis, CEO and founder, was also a police officer, so he knows the importance of safety and the risk of moving. All of his movers are screened, drug tested to ensure our safety. His movers are professionally trained at the Good Greek Academy to learn how to wrap, pack, unpack, load, unload your precious belongings for a safe trip to your new home. Good Greek is your total relocation company that will help you find a home, sell a home, get insurance, transport your car. Take your junk and move you. They're your one-stop shop for all your relocation needs. Good Greek Moving and Storage is also the official movers of 18 colleges and major league sports teams in the state of Florida. So whether it's a move across the town or across the country, trust America's best movers, Good Greek. Schedule your move today at goodgreek.com. And believe it or not, I just moved recently, and I have used Good Greek. And no bullshit, they are good. They're the real deal. I've dealt with movers in the past, and many cops that I know, retired guys going from New York to Florida, have used them.
Correct.
And that's the real deal. So anyway, back to talk.
What can our listeners do to help you get this mess straightened out? I know that the city council is considering a change referendum, I believe.
Right. That's the one that the Common Sense
Right.
Caucus has proposed.
A referendum to whether or not be a sanctuary city.
Correct. I mean, obviously, the listeners, that your listeners there, number one, like you said, people that are law enforcement out in the community are our eyes and ears, but so are our listeners. And if anyone has any type of lead, or they believe there's some crimes that are being committed, unfortunately, I don't get the cooperation or information from NYPD. If they want to report it, I have an email. I'm be glad to speak it out right now. If you see anything, or if you know of any type of crimes that involve foreign-born nationals, please report it. It's New York, www.newyork, spelled out, .outreach at ice.dhs.gov. And once again, it's www.newyork.outreach at ice.dhs.gov. And we man that email for leads, and we follow up on them accordingly.
Is there a telephone number?
There's one telephone number you could use. It's 1-866-2-DHS ICE, ICE. So that's 866, the number 2, DHS ICE. That's the phone number. The other one, the email comes directly to me, to my office. The other one goes to a national center that the leads get fanned out that way.
Well, you might get a lot more work after this.
We're here to help. Like I said, we have a mission-critical function. My staff is very professional, the men and women, and they do a great job every day.
How much staff do you have in New York?
We have, a couple hundred, several hundred between New York and Long Island and the 7 lower counties of the Hudson Valley region. So, like I said, we can always use more resources, but every law enforcement agency and director is going to tell you we'd love to have more resources.
Right. How's the relationship with Nassau and Suffolk County and other departments throughout the state?
Well, obviously, they don't follow the city sanctuary policies, but what people don't realize is the governor, the former governor,
Cuomo.
yes, thank you. It eluded me there. Former Governor Cuomo passed 2 laws that severely restrict cooperation throughout the state of New
he called you
York.
a bunch of thugs, right?
I'm not going to comment on what he said.
You don't look like a thug.
Exactly. I've been called a lot worse. It doesn't matter. But the laws are the green light law, which basically stated and took away access for all ICE law enforcement officers, not only in New York, but nationwide, including our Customs and Border Protection people, from running New York City tags. So we can't run a tag. So if we're doing a stakeout or we're sitting somewhere and a car pulls up with New York City tags, because of the ORI, when we run the query, it'll get denied. Oh. So you want to talk about a law enforcement safety issue, we don't know what we're dealing with at that point. That's number one, the green light law. Number 2 is called the Protect Our Court Act, or they call it POCA, P-O-C-A. And what this did, now we have internal policies in ICE about arrests at courthouse. And basically, we don't utilize arresting at courthouse unless it's an exigent circumstance. So that policy's in effect. This went a lot further and basically said that we could not, ICE in a administrative arrest, because the majority of our arrests are administrative in nature, not criminal. They stated that we were not allowed to arrest someone that is leaving his house to go to court, that is at court, during court, outside of the court, and leaving the court to go back home. So basically, a lot of times we don't have viable addresses on these individuals, but we do know when they might be going to court. Right. So if we know when they're going to court, we maybe would get them as before they went in, or let them finish and we get them on the way out. Now we can't even do that. So basically, if we could see the individual, he's leaving the courtroom, he's going back to where he lives, as per this new law, my officers, myself, can be sued if we make an arrest. Now, this is what I'm talking about, how they stack these policies. You have the city policies and you have the state policies, so much that I give you an example the other day that still keeps me up at night because I worry about this. I had a staff sitting on an individual that we were looking to arrest. We were in an area, it was late at night, and it was an individual that was released by, NYPD, whether it was bail reform or the detainer wasn't honored. We had a whereabout, we were looking, he had gone into an area waiting for him to come out. As he finally came out and we went to go execute the arrest to pull him over, another unmarked car came at the same time where we almost hit each other, and we all jumped out, and it was NYPD. And we were in the same area, same time, sitting there together. We had no clue, because there's no cooperation amongst our agencies. And we found out what their lead is that their source told them the individual was supposed to have guns loaded in the car and on him. My staff didn't know that.
Wow. My
employees didn't know that. And on top of it, you have agents jumping out and officers jumping out. Who's to say they don't realize, because we're all in undercover, that you have a friendly fire incident? And this has to stop, because now we're coming to the point where not only there's no cooperation when we should be cooperating, we're almost having incidents that occur because there's no cooperation. And that would really weigh on my mind if anything like that would ever occur, because it's so inane that these policies that they state protect the individuals, and it's so farther from the truth.
That's not safe. That's
No.
just a safety issue that needs to be addressed.
Absolutely.
I totally agree with you, Ken. Captain?
It's very frustrating. I'm sitting here and I'm squirming.
Yeah.
Because, after a 40-year career, I can't believe this is happening. It's
Most New
terrible,
Yorkers,
terrible.
I'm sure, are totally unaware of what you just mentioned.
That's what I'm saying. That's why I want to get it out there. I want to educate the public, just so they can. And I tell them, take a look. This just recently happened in Maryland. You have two jurisdictions that were sanctuary jurisdictions, Baltimore County, Montgomery County. They decided to change their sanctuary policies and now work with ICE in those areas because of all the crime that was occurring.
Right.
It's common sense. I don't know why we can't do that. It makes the community safer when we all collaborate and work together.
Yeah, we agree. I agree. You agree, right, Cap?
Yeah, well, I think as these incidents keep up, with the illegals, especially when they confront law enforcement and they fight, and they a couple of shots, I think the public will become very aware and get very angry.
Hopefully it's not too late. I mean, it needs to stop now.
Absolutely. I agree 100%.
I understand, Ken, you're also a hockey player.
That is correct. I am, yes.
Yeah.
So
Ice hockey.
Ice hockey, I've been playing almost 50 years, a little over 50 years. And I always tell my staff, I said, look, the job is stressful. You need to have ways to decompress. I said, I have two avenues. I'm a gym rat. I've always been a gym rat in my life. Okay. And the other one is I've been playing hockey for 50 years. So if I have a bad day, I always say I just feel sorry for the guys on the other team that night.
I like it, Ken. I like it. Ranger fan?
Yes, diehard Ranger fan. I'm still in mourning. It was a good run.
Florida's a good team.
They're very strong. Yes. They're a heavy team. They're meant for the playoffs. And hopefully we learn a little bit from their makeup because either us or Florida, obviously, I think would win the final.
Absolutely.
And I think Florida's
the winner
on its
of that,
way.
I believe, series.
Yeah, I mean,
win the Stanley Cup.
We need to learn a little bit from that because they're totally heavy team. The way they play defense first.
So I'd like to thank our guest today, Ken, thank you very much. Ken Genalo, New York City Field Office Director of ICE, right?
Correct.
Okay, and plays ice hockey.
Yes, see that?
There you go. I like it. Thank you, everyone, for listening. If you like what you hear, please subscribe to Cop Talk. You could also follow us on Twitter at Cop Talk WABC. That's at Cop Talk WABC. Until next time, thank you for listening. God bless you. God bless America. And God bless law enforcement throughout the country as well as global.
Yes, 100%. Thank you.
Until next time, be safe.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Hey, it's the Good Greek Spiro, and I have some exciting news. Good Greek has been awarded National Mover of the Year. You've trusted the Good Greek for decades with your family's moving and storage needs. Now Good Greek is proud to be the nation's top mover. So when it's time for you to move across town or across the country, trust America's best mover, Good Greek. Go to goodgreek.com for Good Greek, the National Mover of the Year.
Good Greek Moving and Storage, your superhero movers.